started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fasting Method podcast. This is Coach Terri Lance, and I am joined by Coach Heather Shuker, and I am so excited to get to do yet another episode focusing on motivation. Heather, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Terri. Thanks so much for having me back.
Of course. So Heather, so far we have talked about a number of different aspects of motivation. And I know that we still have a couple more motivation points up our sleeves here. And I know one of the things we haven't really dug into yet is the idea of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about kind of how that plays out for people in this journey.
Yeah, Terri, I definitely spend a lot of time thinking about this. The thing is that we certainly would love to have intrinsic motivation for most of the things that we do. We want to have a self-perpetuating motivational source that we can just tap into all the time. But that doesn't seem to be what happens in general. I think for most things, especially as we're getting going, the extrinsic motivations are what kind of is driving the bus from the beginning. And I think that stems back even from childhood. For example, we might have been put in soccer or given an instrument to play as children, and we might not even like doing it that much, but we keep doing it because our friends are doing it. So we don't care too much about soccer, but we still keep showing up to the games and practices because all our friends are doing it. That's extrinsic or external motivation. Whereas if we love the game, we are so into soccer or playing the clarinet, that's intrinsic motivation. And that's generally the type of motivation that world-renowned athletes have or world-renowned musicians have.
Absolutely, Heather. And I think it's even important to think about, why is it? Is there a difference between the impact of extrinsic versus intrinsic? And it still reminds me of a quote by Simon Sinek. I don't have it right in front of me, but I have the gist of it in my head. That working hard for something that we don't care about is called stress. And working hard for something that we love is called passion. So if I don't love playing the clarinet, if I don't enjoy being in band, but I feel pressure because my parents want me to be in band or they've already bought my instrument, it doesn't light me up. It doesn't drive me to want to do it. Oftentimes, there's just a pressure to continue doing it. And so I think in this journey, those of us who are relying too heavily on extrinsic motivators, those start to crumble after time. If we don't also have stronger intrinsic motivation. So maybe along the way, I find that I love going on band trips, and I love it when we go to district competitions and we get feedback and we win. Now I'm motivated to practice my clarinet. I want to do well with that. And that's that power of intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I think it's okay to start with the external ones. Another example might be when you're a small child, your parents are getting you to brush your teeth, right? It's okay that that's where we have to start. But ultimately, that's not where we want to finish things. We don't want our mom to have to call us on the phone every night at bedtime to remind us to brush our teeth. It needs to be something that we have a drive to do. So here in the fasting method, one of the things that we provide as a service is a little bit of that extrinsic motivation. So that means we have those community group meetings. We have coaching support. We can be that external force that helps keep you going. But ultimately, in order to be permanently successful on this journey, there needs to be that switch, that intrinsic motivation to want to live healthier, to make the nutritional choices, the movement choices, the stress management choices, the fasting choices that are going to perpetuate a healthy lifestyle. That's the end game. That's the goal. So a lot of times what we're doing with coaching in general is helping people get there. Get from needing all of that outside rewards and go-get-ems and gold stars to an internal, I eat this way because I feel better, I sleep better, I relate to the world in a better way, which you get eventually, but not at the outset. And so it's almost like a little bit of a leap of faith with some extrinsic pushes. And that eventually gets you to that intrinsic self-perpetuating place, if that makes sense.
It does. And I just had a conversation with one of my clients about this the other day. She was wavering a little bit. She was struggling a little bit because the external rewards weren't there. And actually, the external influences were leading her toward other choices. The intrinsic piece was that she knows how much better she feels physically, energetically while fasting. So she actually had to defy the lack of extrinsic motivation because the extrinsic motivation was more to eat crappy food. And she had to rely on her intrinsic motivation of feeling well, feeling more energetically strong, less brain fog, less inflamed. Those things had to drive her because she couldn't rely on the external. So Heather, I wonder maybe we could talk a little bit about, because we kind of touched base about this before, but it sounds like we're kind of putting this into things that help keep motivation going or help us succeed, and things that kind of kill motivation or dampen our motivation. I wonder if we could identify some things that we're aware of in our own journey, in our work with clients and community members. What are some of the things that either annihilate or dampen, mute our motivation in the traditional ways that we think of motivation?
Well, I'll tell you, Terri, one of the things that I think people do is they expect to have the same level of enthusiasm when they get started in perpetuity, right? They expect to constantly feel that gung-ho motivation that we talked about before. And when it starts to falter and they don't kind of feel the enthusiasm and it feels more like a grind, then their motivation starts to flag in that they're like, well, I don't feel like doing it anymore, so I must not want to. When really, you can't expect it to feel good the whole time. By definition, this journey is tough, right? Weight loss is hard. Fasting is hard. Changing your diet is hard. All of these things are hard. And it's very difficult to feel good about doing something hard over the long haul. So rather than expect to continuously feel good about what you're doing, I think it is actually better to expect it to feel hard, so that when you kind of reinforce yourself and have that, okay, I know this isn't going to be easy, but I'm up for this challenge, then each time that you step up to the plate and do that hard thing that you didn't feel like doing, boom, there's a reward. There's that intrinsic motivation being built because you're getting feedback that says, I'm the kind of person that does hard things. And when you start to identify as the kind of person that does hard things, then you are motivated to continue to be that kind of person. And then you start getting that virtue cycle that comes from doing difficult things, accomplishing them, feeling good about it, so craving to do it again.
Tied with that, Heather, I think motivation killer 102 is expecting that I'm going to get the desired result I want right away. And I think for many of us that are working on the goal of weight loss, always, weight loss takes longer than we would like it to take. And if I'm relying on getting that feedback, those wins, that my weight is just every day going down in the right direction I want it to go, my motivation is going to be halted. And so what's the antidote to that? I think what you described, looking for other things to help drive me, that intrinsic feeling better, maybe tracking my habits and seeing that I'm doing tons of great things for my body. And there's always this lingering but after that. I'm doing great things, but I'm not losing 20 pounds a week right now. What is wrong with me? So looking for other kinds of wins in our journey, I think, is a way to kind of combat that motivation killer that I'm going to see great results repeatedly until I don't need to do this anymore. One that's an unrealistic expectation. So that's going to kill motivation right away. But instead, to help combat that, we can build in more realistic things to be watching. How do I feel? How's my inflammation going? Am I decreasing my brain fog? How many times this week have I avoided snacking when my first impulse was to snack? Keeping track of those wins, I think, can be a real infusion to ongoing motivation.
So like you were saying, Terri, yes, we definitely want to look at how we're feeling, how our clothes are fitting, how much inflammation we have, all of those things. But on an even more specific level, are we doing the things that we know will eventually affect those things? So are we celebrating the inputs? And I know we talked about this before, but it bears repeating. There are things that we can do on a daily basis that will move us toward or away from our health. Are we doing them or not? So am I showing up for my fast 3 times a week? Am I eating in a way congruent with reaching my goals? Am I trying to consistently move my body? Do I have a stress management practice? Right? Those inputs that we can do on a regular basis are what we can do, right? Those are the levels that we can pull. So if we are consistently pulling them, that is worth celebrating. The score will take care of itself. Eventually, the scale will move, etc. But if we keep showing up for ourselves, that's what we can do. So that's what we need to embrace, get behind, celebrate, and feel motivated by. If I can give myself a star for what I'm doing in fasting and exercising and eating and stress management, like if I'm doing all the possible things, I can't possibly ask anything else of myself. So there's nothing more that I could do. So the only thing that there is to do is to celebrate the fact that I'm moving toward my goal. And eventually, if you're doing all of those things, it is going to take care of itself. Maybe not at the pace you want it to, but in time, it just will. And part of it is having the faith. Part of it is expecting it to be hard. And part of it is just showing up whether you feel like it or not.
And having, like you're saying, Heather, really having realistic expectations. Thinking of losing 80 pounds this month isn't realistic. But making progress on my self-care and my habit goals, that is feasible. That's the stuff we should be focusing on. You know, another thing we had identified earlier and we haven't brought up here yet is that some people inadvertently kill their motivation by kind of pre-gaming their dread. They troubleshoot before they even get to an obstacle or a challenge. And I think you had said you had seen this with some of your work with people in the community or clients. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I'll have people that have a vacation 3 months from now. They're already fretting and stressing about, like, how am I going to do that? I'm going to get off track. I just know that I am. And that's when I fail. And that's when, whoa. First of all, you've got 3 months of progress between now and then. Second of all, being proactive is excellent, but you don't need to be proactive for something that's going to happen 3 months from now. It's okay to push that off until a couple weeks before you leave, for example. And I think kind of what happens in general for people, even at the beginning of their journey, they start to imagine all the times in their life that they're going to have to not eat the food that they want to eat. All the times that they're going to be fasting when they don't want to. And they condense months of struggles into now, right? They bring all of that worry and stress into right now and try to manage it all at once. That's unreasonable. That's unreasonable. We need to let that stress, that future stress, stay out there where it belongs and deal with what's in our moment, which is the only stress that we can handle in general. So taking things as they come is a way to manage that and not kind of pre-stressing about future problems. Like, I'll have people at the very beginning of their journey, like, what am I going to do with the last 15 pounds? Well, let's deal with that then. How about we deal with the first 75 right now, and we'll get to those 15 pounds when the time is right. We'll let future you that has more experience, more wisdom, deal with that. We'll let today you deal with today you.
And the reality is that between now and that future point, you're going to have so many more successes. You're going to, as you said, have more knowledge, more experience, more confidence, hopefully. We don't have to troubleshoot it right now. I kind of chuckled when you first brought up that example because in June, I gave up sugar for 1 year. And as soon as I had that thought that it's going to start June 1st, I panicked and I thought, oh no, what am I going to do at Thanksgiving? It was May 17th at the time. So I was worrying about something that was going to happen 6 months in the future. It was like I was already playing out in my head. What am I going to do when everyone else is eating dessert at Thanksgiving and I'm not? I kind of quickly caught that I was doing that and dismissed it. And we're coming up on Thanksgiving now, and I'm totally not worried about how I'm going to get through Thanksgiving. But I could have let that stop me from moving forward. I could have tried to troubleshoot that for a week. I don't need that answer right now. I needed to know what I was going to do June 1st, June 2nd, June 3rd, not get ahead of myself. So one of the big motivation killers is troubleshooting ahead of time, catastrophizing, making issues, making mountains out of molehills. But I think how can we kind of infuse the motivation is to remind ourselves, I don't have to decide that now. I don't have to troubleshoot that now. I will know what to do when that time comes. I will have choices. I am resourceful. I will figure it out then. Because our lower brain will let that worry, that catastrophizing now prevent us from making one step forward.
That is so true. And frequent listeners of this podcast may remember that you and I did a podcast about gaming and this thing. And it just reminds me of that when you said that the future you is going to have to deal with that. You're going to be a level 8 person when you have to deal with these problems. You don't have to solve them as a level 1 person. So all of the tricks and the experience and the willpower muscle that you build all the way between now and then is going to help then deal with then. And so keep in mind that we are works in progress and we evolve, and we don't want to give our now selves a problem that our evolved selves are going to have to deal with, our future self is going to be even better. They're going to be even more powerful, more knowledgeable. Let's let them handle it, which is a little bit different than always expecting our future selves to be perfect, which is something else that we do. Like today, I can't do a 46-hour fast, but my future self can surely handle it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that with time and experience, we should give ourselves a chance to build and develop into someone that can handle more difficult things. It's been my experience that that's exactly what has happened. Me now can do a whole lot more than me 2 years ago.
Absolutely. Another motivation killer that I think we've touched on before, and I've certainly talked about in other podcast episodes and other places, everyone's probably getting really familiar with it, is going back to that word, catastrophizing. It is making it out as though if I made a choice today that was off course for me, that I have blown it. I've ruined it. Now my goal isn't possible. That is not the truth. All you did is you made this moment complicated, and you get another moment right around the corner where you get to make another choice. Some of you are familiar with the analogy that I've shared from one of my favorite books on breaking up with sugar, but she talked about not slashing the tires. If you get one flat tire, you fix it so that you can keep moving forward. You don't go slash the other tires. And I think that's what a lot of us do. We kill our motivation by believing we've ruined our chances. And then we fall into that spiral of, well, I might as well do this then. Well, I might as well eat some more of this. And I might as well not do this fast. And it just spirals out of hand. So not catastrophizing when you make a choice that is not ideal, because you get to make another choice right after that.
I literally had a client today that ran into that. She was in the middle of a 36-hour fast. She had her grandchildren. She had taken them to a fast food restaurant, and that cephalic response was working on her really hard. Now, in that moment, she did not eat the fast food that she highly desired. She went home, broke her fast with a reasonable meal, and then felt like a failure because she broke her fast. Gave herself no credit for making a healthier choice, no grace for being in a very difficult situation, right? Fighting our biology not to eat. Only, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. I'm a failure. And then ended up having dessert with her grandchildren because she quote unquote blew it. And so it's not like it's benign to have that feeling that you blew it. When you have that black and white thinking, blowing it sometimes for people means, well, the whole day is ruined, as opposed to, I didn't complete a fast. I had a healthy meal, which is not failing at all. That's actually making a really great decision. The decision to not give yourself grace was actually the bad decision in that moment.
Absolutely. So Heather, I have a feeling you and I are going to come back at a future date with even more emphasis on this motivation piece, because it's a nonstop topic that comes up in the community, comes up for people all of the time. Some people think I've conquered this motivation thing because I joined the community. Again, the extrinsic people cannot carry you. They can help, they can support you, but you are going to have to make the steps. You are going to have to take the actions. So Heather, what we haven't made note of so far in you being here is that you are going to be here much more frequently. We keep acting like, woohoo, you're back, you're another guest, but really you're not just a guest here. You're really a kind of standard part of this podcast now. So I'm very excited to think about coming back to these topics and others as we keep going.
Yes, Terri, I think we are absolutely going to keep coming back to these topics, because the reality is, much as, yes, nutrition is important and there's a lot of conflicting information out there. Yes, there are different fasting protocols according to your goals, and there certainly is one that's going to work better for you. Those are important things. But I think you will agree, I know you'll agree, and most of our community would agree that the real issue that we're all battling is a mindset issue. How do I stay consistent? How do I stay motivated? How do I manage stress in such a way that I can stay congruent with my way of eating, with my fasting, still reach my goals, and not have myself completely derailed over and over again? These are big, hard topics. So I agree. We're definitely going to need to keep coming back to them because all of us are going to have to keep battling them. That is life, both in the therapeutic phase of our weight loss journey and in the maintenance phase. They will keep coming. So we will have to keep talking about them.
Well, I look forward to that, Heather. I feel like you and I could talk about the phone book and still enjoy ourselves. So I look forward to these conversations moving forward. And until we meet again, I wish you well, and I wish everyone happy fasting. Take good care of yourself, and we will be back soon.
Thanks so much. Make good choices, everybody.